We'll be back in just a moment when we discuss what would have happened in World War II if today's political and journalistic atmosphere had prevailed then. We'll be right back.
According to Pentagon sources, this now brings the official total of Americans killed overseas to over 250,000. Congresswoman and House Leader Ancy Lagosii took time out from her re-election campaign to mark the occasion.
250,000 of our finest coming home in wooden boxes. For what? To support a lie. What has Germany and Italy got to do with Pearl Harbor?
Nothing!
That's right, nothing!
Roosevelt lied! Millions died! Roosevelt lied! Millions died!
And that is a brief excerpt from a new satirical video. It's out called This is DNN, and it is filled with sepia-toned scenes from what purports to be an old newsreel of modern-style coverage of World War II. Back with our panel to pose the question, well, is that a realistic picture of what it might have been like if today's politics and today's news media coverage had prevailed in World War II?
Well, clearly, you know, every battle, if it had been transmitted in live and in color back to the United States, it would have been horrific.
Well, what about even in sepia tones like that, when you don't have all the battles, but you have the newsreel footage?
Look, there's no question about what it's harder to run a war nowadays than it was back then, when you had censorship and generally the country was supporting it. But the idea that Iraq is the same as World War II is just not right. I mean, we were attacked. We were attacked at Pearl Harbor. We were attacked. And Hitler, 4 days later, declared war on the United States after he had overrun Europe. And everybody or most people in the country, by the way, Congresswoman Lagosii would have been a Republican in those days. If the isolationists were mainly Republicans, not Democrats as they are now. So there were people around who say, Roosevelt maneuvered us into this war. He put an oil embargo on the Japanese and forced them. But the fact is that we were attacked. In this case, in the case of Iraq, this was a war of choice. This was a preemptive war that we decided that we were going to wage. And, I think, I hope we win. But the fact is, and it was popular in the beginning, but the fact is that it has not been successful, and the president is suffering for it.
Lord, I appreciate the distinction you made between Iraq and World War II, but that wasn't the question, and that wasn't the point.
That wasn't.
No, you didn't. No,
yeah,
you didn't even touch on the question. The question is, what would today's media been like covering World War II? For example, I think it would have been brutal. Think of the 6 weeks when American troops were stuck in Normandy, just off the beach, and they couldn't break out.
Not to mention the hideous bloodshed of the Normandy invasion itself, the Normandy landing.
Right, which was a great miscalculation. All the bombing that was done by the naval ships and the Air Force and the Army planes that had bombed the Germans on Omaha Beach didn't clear them out at all, didn't have any effect, and so on. I'm sure there would have been, the press would have jumped on that. Think of the whole North Africa campaign, which was almost a disaster from beginning to end in World War II. Think of the airborne jump on Sicily when hundreds of soldiers got blown out to sea and drowned and so on. The press would have been merciless. And it wasn't, as it turned out, in World War II.
What do you think?
That's absolutely true, and hundreds of thousands of people died, and Vietnam, 58,000, Korea, 54,000. Yeah, it would have been very difficult to fight those wars, but I say now, so what? I mean, your point, going back to Mort's point,
well, the question that it raises is whether those standards were the right standards to apply, or which would, I think it can be argued, have crippled the American war effort, or the standards of today the right ones to apply?
That's in some ways beside the point, because there's a reality today that
so you don't want to answer the question, or what?
No, there's a reality that a president has to factor in today. When you ask the American public to go to war, you need to realize and understand what the
news media can do, right?
And the media is no longer a question of the media in Iraq.
That's it for the panel.